Yeah, I like questions like that. Are all sins the same? Are there degrees to sin? You know, I was having a rather lively discussion with a heretic the other day. He was doing like what everybody does automatically, and it's like they sort of do it without thinking. Sin is sin, and they're implying, you see, all sin is the same. And when they say, the wages of sin are death, and especially when the topic is, or the subject is, or the question I'm asking is infants, yeah, they have a corrupt nature, but they're not operating in it. They're not operating in anything. But when they go, the wages of sin is death, sin is sin, they're implying that all sin is the same, and so therefore there are no legal distinctions. Really what they're doing is they're saying that God is making no legal distinctions between any kind of sins. They're all the same basically in terms of punishment ramifications. And also they have God not seeing mitigation. He doesn't see the reasons for different types of sins. Sins of ignorance, for that which I do not want to do, I wind up doing. It's not me. It's the principle of the corrupt nature, sin in the body, right? Well, they depict God as not seeing that He has wrath on you, when it's not you doing it. Because Paul said, for that which I do not want to do, it is not I. You see, I'm being forced to do it. And so, you see how if you are in an unlawful state, and it's not of your own doing, and God's a reasonable fellow, He's not angry at you. In fact, He sees what prevents you from being lawful as the problem. And so there are legal distinctions, and there are degrees to sin. There are different types of sins, different categories. It's interesting about the preference for good and the preference for evil. Because Paul says, for that which I want to do, I do not, and that which I do not want to do, I wind up doing. The part that he's saying, that which I do not want to do, I wind up doing, is not including rape, murder, and bank robbery, and those sorts of things. You see, the guy who prefers evil and loves evil, he'll take flesh all the way out. All the way. It's just like if you cut off an outlaw biker on the highway, and he has his way, he'll probably darn near beat you to death. And that's the flesh. And that's a man walking according to the flesh, who wants to be walking according to the flesh. And so therefore his outward acts, you see, are much more severe. They're actually elective outward acts. And so when Paul says, for that which I do not want to do, I wind up doing, you see what I mean? It's not including, rape, murder, burning and pillaging and insulting people. So there is a category of sins which are elective sins. And the sin nature, or the biological corrupt nature, does not make you bow to a false god, to Molech, or anything like that. It doesn't. There is no make you bow to Molech gene in the genome. So there are things that man can avoid all by himself and really don't have anything to do with deliverance. You see, there's no deliverance from being a serial murderer. You don't even have to do that to begin with. And I know how religious people are. You see how they try to remove the legal distinctions. And they'll say, well, if you hate your brother in your heart, you're guilty of murder. Oh, so, really, I had a bad hair day, and I got a little ticked at my brother, and so now I'm a serial murderer. What planet are you from, is my question. I mean, could you imagine them sitting on a court, being a judge, and executing that strange religious philosophy they have? Well, what did this guy do? Well, he ran a stop sign. Okay, the penalty is death and infinite suffering. What about this guy? He robbed a bank. Okay, the penalty is death and infinite suffering. What about this guy? Well, he was born with a simple body. Okay, the penalty is death and infinite suffering. That's what they're saying God is doing. Infinite suffering for everybody. They'll say, Jesus Christ died in every man's place. He took the wrath of God in every man's place, and every man deserved that gruesome death and that wrath, that infinite wrath. Every man deserved it. Every man. Really? What about the infant that lived 1 month and died? I'm saying God would look a little strange if He would decide to nail infants to trees and start yelling at them. That's what a psychotic does. You see how if they try to, do a little passion play in terms of God giving everybody what they say, everybody deserves. You're going to have infants being flogged, nailed to little crosses, I don't know what, like little Cabbage Patch crosses, and then he starts yelling at them. However that is, this mysterious protoplasm wrath, whatever it is. See, they can't even describe what that is. So yeah, there are distinctions. Sins of ignorance, sins of knowledge. You see where accountability begins? Sins of knowledge, sins of ignorance. There's a legal border right there. Sins due to inability. And you see sins where you have the ability not to do them, right? The dividing line's right there in between, in terms of not accountable and accountable. For that which I want to do, I do not. Well, you're not accountable for falling short there, now are you? And the very thing I don't want to do, I wind up doing. It's not me. Well, guess what? You're not held accountable for that. Where you have different types of crimes, there are different categories, and it's based on the state, abilities, knowledge, or ignorance of the person. Deliverance is not from bowing to Molech. That's where God says, remove the evil from your deeds. Stop bowing to idols. Stop worshiping false gods. If you will look at the commandments, do you think God's lying? Thou shalt not bear false witness. Well, you see, if man can't help but bear false witness, I mean, you see where you have bearing false witness due to ignorance? But you see, when you get the right information, do you really need God to help you stop lying? Guess what? 1 + 1 is 2. Now the question is, did God help me say that? I don't need deliverance from 1 + 1 is 1. I just need the right information and the right principles. But anyways, he says, thou shalt not commit adultery. Guess what? Or thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's possessions or his wife. You shall not commit adultery. Guess what? There is nothing in the sin nature that makes you go next door and commit adultery. There's nothing that forces you to go rob a bank. There's nothing that forces you to go murder people or anything of the like. And so, that which man is responsible for and he can avoid, he should. And so this is where you have the line of accountability where it starts. There are things that are avoidable, and even if you are doing those things, you can stop it. That which is under your control, you have no need of God to control. And that which is beyond your control, you have need of God for. There are distinctions between sins of ignorance and sins of knowledge. Sins of ignorance are overlooked. No wonder the atonement is for sins of ignorance. And that's why you have examples in the Bible of where offerings are refused. He says, I will not accept any offerings for what you people have done. And it's because it's willful sins. And, bowing to idols and all those sorts of things. There are legal distinctions in reality. I mean, look at the infant. What has the infant done in reality? Now, a religious person will go, well, he's born sinful. I'm sorry. Maybe you bore false witness to what I asked. You're pretending like you answered my question and you didn't. What has the infant done? You see, to say that he's sinful, really, is to say that he sins. Why don't you name a sin that a newborn infant commits? Well, they can't. Then they start quoting things that are really irrelevant to the question, and they pretend like it answers it, and they don't. In reality, you can look at a newborn infant, you can see he's completely unable to do anything. He's completely unable. And so, how is he responsible? And where did the so-called age of accountability come from? According to some religious people, it shouldn't even exist if God's going to hold infants accountable. It's funny how they can say out of one side of their mouth 1 minute, infants are accountable, okay? And but then on the other side they say, well, you see, you have the age of accountability. Well, I would call that a huge contradiction.